Hi, guys, and welcome back to the Backstage Bikini podcast with your hosts, Grace and Jade. And this week we have someone I've been dying to get on for ages. Genuinely, I'm always in her DMs. But we have IFBB Bikini Pro and posing coach. And I'm sure there's much more to that roster, but we have Leonie West on, our very own UK IFBB Bikini Pro. How are you, darling?
I'm good, and I'm really excited and a little bit nervous about this as well.
Don't
Oh,
be,
is
we're
it your
harmless.
first podcast?
I,
Like,
I
or
I did one like just before lockdown. Like I quite like speaking, but for some reason I was really nervous on that, and I have this like really bad habit of like putting my foot in stuff. That's what I need to try not
We
to
made a podcast doing that. Don't worry about it.
well, we know you share like a lot on your Instagram about your journey like over the years, and I think definitely people from the UK have been following along. But I think verbally it's going to be good to kind of hear it all. So take us back to the beginning, Leonie, about like when you actually got into competing, because you have been around for quite some time, but how you got into it and bikini as well specifically, and where you, I suppose, back then hoped your career was going to go.
Right. Are you ready for this? It's a long story.
Drum roll. Let's go.
So I have been competing now for about coming up to 8 years. I started when I was 34, and I'd actually only been training for about 6 months before that as well. So like I've done life backwards basically. I got married quite young and I got divorced when I was 25. So like I did all the grown up stuff and I should have been partying. And then I moved to London at 25 and just did all the stuff that I should have been done in my early 20s. And it was amazing. Like I was like it was just out in London all the time, burning the candle at both ends, like investment banking job, lots of cocktails all the time. And then I just got to a point where like the party was no longer fun anymore, and I needed something in my life, and I didn't know what that was. And I got a letter through the door from like a local gym that was opening, and I just went one day and just never not went. And then like within 6 months, I was just walking around the gym with my tiny little muscles that I thought were massive. And a guy walked up to me, he was like, "Have you ever competed? Like you've got a bit of muscle." And I was like, "Nope, but I'm gonna." So 6 weeks later, I did a show. It was called Miss Galaxy Universe. It was one of those like little pageant things.
Nice.
And I prepped myself. When I say prepped myself, I ate 1,000 calories and did an hour of cardio every day because I had no idea what I was doing.
Oh my God, that hurts me listening to it.
Yeah, putting yourself through that is something else. Like,
Like, I thought that's what you did. You just didn't eat and you did lots of cardio when you were
Mhm.
an athlete. And like, but it was so much fun. And yeah, I just decided to get a coach and just dived straight into it. And I found a coach over in America who was coaching a few girls over here. And I basically, like, he had handpicked a UK team. And I was still really tiny at this point. And I begged him to let me be on the team. I begged him to hand my money to him and be on the team because I really wanted to do it. And he was like, "Okay," kind of thing. And I was like totally the black sheep of the team and like the tiny one, and no one really thought I was going anywhere. And that just fueled me to go somewhere. So, and he took me over to America. My second ever show, my first ever NPC show was in Vegas. Um,
Small then.
No
Starting
pressure.
small.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no pressure.
I
I
was
mean, throw
still quite.
yourself in the deep end. Like, that's how you should do it.
It was scary, but it's still to this day like my favorite ever show. Like the Americans, they know how to do shows, and obviously it was in Vegas, and it was all glitzy. It was in a casino which they used to hold the Olympia at the time as well. And like all the bikini pros of the day were there. There was a bikini pro show, and it was just immense, and I just loved it. And yeah, flew back out to Vegas 3 weeks later, and then unfortunately my uh, coach passed away.
Oh.
So I started prepping myself, and yeah, I've been competing ever since. I did all right in the amateur league. I always placed top three in like every single show. A few firsts in my last one. And
Mhm.
then yeah, I went and did turned 40 in 2022. Went and did the Euromasters because it was the first ever one in Europe, and won 2 pro cards as well from Tyler Mannion, of all people, as well. So
himself.
Yeah, it was really good. And they had really good feedback for me. They were like, don't change, like, you're perfect, you know. I also had a chat with what's his name, Team Elite Physique, Adam Bonilla.
Adam Bonilla, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he gave me really good feedback as well. He was like, you know, you deserve to be not just getting pro cards, but winning shows in the Open. So I was like all buzzing for it and everything. But since turning pro, it's been a different story. I've seen this year.
For now. For now. For now. No, that's wild. I mean, so you were competing, what, 6 years before you turned pro then?
Yeah.
First for being your first, yeah. What was it like in the pro league? In the amateur league compared to sort of turning pro? You've alluded to it there in terms of how different it is, but in terms of your enjoyment, your experience and things like that, how has it changed?
Yeah, it has. It has. I've really felt a lot of pressure since I turned pro. And the thing is, I think everyone does it for different reasons, right? And you know, I put my hand on my heart, like, I'm not here to go to the Olympia. Like, if I get to the Olympia, I mean, one, it would be crazy because I get nervous enough on a little stage, like. So I'm not dying to get to the Olympia, but like, this has always been like my journey. Like, this has all been about, especially because I've been coaching myself. Like, I've never gone in going, oh, I want to get a pro card. I was always like, right, so I placed 3rd at that one. I want to either place better or place 3rd, you know, with better athletes. And that was always my journey. If the look was better time on time again, I was happy. And I did always place better, like, throughout the whole of the amateur league. But yeah, since turning pro, like, everyone is there to get to the Olympia, you know, and I'm just there going, yeah, I just want to look a bit better than last time. And, you know, I want to do my best. I want to conquer my fears, which is why I got into this whole thing, you know, in the first place. And it's very intimidating and a lot of pressure. And like, at least at the amateur league, when you do a year, you have that regional, you know, which hopefully we all go to the regional trying to bring our best. But it is for most people still a kind of like the practice look for the year, right?
Yeah.
And you don't have that at the pro league, you know. And I've got a very reactive body that, you know, tends to like go a bit skew if on peak week, especially my first one, you know, like I come in very, very lean usually, and I find it really hard to like fill out. So having that sort of regional is a bit less pressure, and at the pro league you're just going straight in and like
it's just the shark tank. You can't get away from it, can you?
Exactly. So I found it a little bit hard, but
a lot of new challenges, I guess.
Exactly.
But it's helping you grow as an athlete, I suppose. In terms of like, I suppose going back to so when you were an amateur, I know that you competed a lot kind of abroad and stuff like that, and we talk a lot on here about just being in the industry a long time and seeing bikini evolve. So, you know, between obviously just seeing bikini change over the years and competing in America, like, do you feel like there is quite a big difference from when you started out versus now?
Massively. So when I started, the posing was very much like, you know, you see the throwbacks of Ashley Kay when she first won the Olympia, and, you know, like the crazy sort of
hand on the hip and the
I think they call that
hip. Is it the hip dip? I'm going to call it the hip dip. I'm just putting it out there now.
I don't know what they call it, but like, it was that kind of posing, and there was no standard, you know, like now we've got that standard front pose. And even if you look at it from like an evolutionary perspective, I mean, even only like 3 years ago, Issa was doing like this, I think they call it the stallion, you know, that twisty one that she used to do. Now, like, we have a standard now, but when I first started, there was no standard. It was a little bit interpretive. My first posing coach, like, she taught me, you know, when you're in your back pose, if they're holding you for a long time, look over your shoulder to give them a wink to get their attention and stuff. It's just mad stuff like that, you know. And like,
need to go find some videos of somebody doing that.
Oh, if Adam could hear this, he'd go crazy.
I know. But it was just, but it was a lot. I don't want to say like a lot more fun back then, but it kind of was a lot more fun because it was about fun. Whereas now it's all very like I said, standardized. I think it's great that the posing is very standardized now. Because there's a lot less interpretation to it and stuff. But
yeah, I feel like you can get away with it at like the highest level, like coming up with new like bits like Laura Lee and stuff like that, adding things. But definitely I think just like for most amateurs, like you can't risk those kind of things.
Yeah. And that, you know, the reason why it's been standardized is because what we do now does show what they want to see. You know, it shows what they want to see, whereas what we were doing back then, God knows what we were showing. Like, but I love that, and I love the fact that the, you know, like, I know there's still a lot of grumbling sometimes from people, you know, because bikini is very subjective, but it was really subjective when I first started. You know, Tyler Mannion, like, he's been just incredible for, you know, I mean, the whole bodybuilding, but like bikini especially, like really starting to like lay out that, you know, this is what we want to see. This is why this person won versus that person. And it's still hard, you know, because we're all different and we can't all bring exactly what he's looking for. And I do think the judges kind of pick now the standard of the show, you know, like you can look really, really incredible, but if everyone else looks a certain standard, I think sometimes those people will come forwards more because, you know, like they don't want a top 5 where everyone's completely different, right? They want the top 5 to look pretty similar. So there's still kind of like a few issues to like iron out, I guess, but it's a lot easier to know where you're going now. I had no idea back then.
I think it does. I mean, Tyler, you've hit the nail on the head in terms of Tyler's sort of feedback, especially on Instagram over the last, 2 years or so, year 2. He really helps iron out those kinks. But from a sort of muscularity standpoint, obviously we've addressed like the posing styles and the flexibility around sort of presentation. But how do you feel like it's evolved? As in like the actual physiques, do you find that that's been a big jump, or do you feel like you've had to mold your physique further to fit a criteria now, or do you feel like it's a little bit more consistent?
I think like everyone talks about the pros are getting bigger and bigger, and I guess that kind of is the case. But like when I started, like I said, because there wasn't really a standard, you would get such a mix of girls, and you would get very big girls, like some a lot bigger than now. And especially when NPC came from because it was in the US before it was in Europe and the UK. And like when it came over here, obviously all of the coaches had been coaching PCA and, you know, WABA and NABA, where the girls were pretty hench and putting those girls in the shows early, so the standard over here was quite big. So in my mind, I kind of feel like it's actually getting a little bit, not just softer as in soft, but like a little bit more petite in some ways. But obviously at the higher level, at the like really high Olympian level, they are massive. I've seen a couple of them up close and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm tiny.
I know. Have you ever felt, because you mentioned at the start you turned 40 2 years ago now, just impressive that, you know, you've been in the game so long. Like I always have massive respect for anybody who's been doing it as long as you. But have you ever felt that, I suppose, with, you know, people that are up and coming, and I'm 27, but I even felt like, oh my God, the standard that is coming up from even, you know, girls who are like 20, 21 and, you know, pro physique worthy. And did you ever feel like as time was going on that like the standard was just getting more and more competitive? And did that ever get to your head, or was it just a case that I'm just enjoying this, I'm just going to keep going?
I think I have only started letting it get to my head since I got to the pro league, if I'm honest. Like, I always felt like 28 until I turned 40. Something about turning 40 changes you, and I feel old all of a sudden. But I've always, not always, but at least later on in the amateur level, I've always been like one of the bigger girls, more muscular girls. So I would never sort of, especially in my upper body at least, I've never sort of felt intimidated in that way. What I struggle with, or have started struggling with, like, since I turned 40 and obviously going in the pro league, is, like I said, it's getting a softer look. And as a as a mature athlete, I'm never going to be soft. Like masters are always denser. You know, we hold our body fat in different places. Or, you know, all the girls in their 20s, they're high on estrogen, you know, they're going to hold a lot more fat on their lower body, which is what the judges want to see. My estrogen is dropping, so I've got shredded legs all the time, you know, so that I'm really, really struggling with, if I'm honest, like not just like to bring it, but mentally all the time. I'm like, have I still got what it takes? Or like, should I literally just be a master's now? Although sometimes I feel like I'm too shredded for masters.
It's
go on, Grace.
No, go ahead.
No, I think like that's probably the first time anybody's ever highlighted that individual point as well, Leonie, because talking about the progression of the sport anyway, like these girls have been competing for a long time. Like there's very few of them that come in and they turn pro and they're at the Olympia within 1 to 2 to 3 years of their career. So muscle density anyway over time, and as your body matures in the gym, is going to change. But equally, I don't think anybody's ever shone a light on the fact that hormonally that is going to impact the look that you can bring. Like we've never had that conversation on, certainly not on this podcast, and I haven't had it with anybody. So I think it's such an important point to note as well, because people, even in different federations, not just talking about the NPC, when you're chasing a specific look, it's always very hard to emulate. So take PCA, for example. They like hard, they like diced, they like that look. Maturer athletes are going to have that predisposition genetic in terms of hormone and how their body has aged and what it's doing right now versus the younger. So it's an interesting point that I hadn't, just to put it out there, but in terms of like how we'll go to your prepping first, because you prep yourself, which I don't think I could do, hand on heart. I really don't.
I'm starting to wonder myself after this year.
How do you find that? We'll come to like sort of your recent prep and things like that, because it'll tie back into the point you've just made. But how is it prepping yourself, especially at this level?
Well, generally I cope quite well. Like in the amateur league, at least, I've coped quite well. And like I said, like we all, I talk about this a lot on Instagram, both the sort of hormone and fat distribution thing, but like, you know, we all have strengths and weaknesses. We're all going to find bits harder than others, you know, and one of my superpowers is I can lose weight really, really quickly, you know, and I think that comes back to being a masters athlete. Everyone puts us in this bucket of, oh, as you get older, hormones, it's harder to lose weight. Most of my clients are masters, and that's not the case. It's harder to get someone like stage lean for the first time, but after that it's a piece. I don't know how to swear on here, but
go ahead.
So I get lean very, very quickly. So that whole, you know, like, you know, people struggling with cardio, all that kind of stuff, like, it's fine. I'm very good at pushing myself. I'm very stubborn. The weight comes off easily. I build muscle easily. But where I struggle is always peak week. One, because my body is very reactive. Two, I mean, as everyone knows, if you've competed, like, you get these prep goggles on and you don't know what you're seeing anymore. And that's where I struggle. I'm like, am I filling out? Am I not? Am I lean? Am I not, you know, too lean kind of thing? And that's where I would love someone to just take it all away from me. But I've worked with a few coaches before, you know, like I said, and I just really struggle to hand that over to someone, if I'm honest. So I'm kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. So
it's difficult, because I think, like, we always say, you know your body better than anyone, and the more preps you do, the more you learn. But it's a hard place to be when you know that you probably do need to hand the reins over to somebody else, but you don't entirely trust them. So what is it about, you know, taking control of your own preps versus like other people? Has there been any, I suppose, scenarios over the years where things have kind of maybe gone wrong with another coach, or things have just gone better yourself, or, you know, any shows in particular that you can think of that stand out?
I think there's I mean, just across the board, I worry because of my age about someone pushing me too hard. Like, I don't want to be like, oh, I'm a fragile grandma, but I am at a point where, you know, women start to get perimenopausal in their mid-40s anyway. And I'm not mid-40s, but I've been doing something with my body for 8 years, which is not natural to it, which we all know is not good for your hormone levels and everything. I was a natty, by the way, for 5 years. I only did my first cycle in 2022, so I've not been pushing it to the max in that way. But even just, you know, like 2 years of not being a natty, I don't feel comfortable with it, and I don't want to do that to my body for a long time. And I find a lot of coaches don't like that
approach.
Yeah. And I find a lot of coaches are just, I'm not a wuss. Like I, you know, like I said, you've seen the kind of condition I get in, and I can hold myself in. Like, I know how to push myself. What I need from a coach is someone who can go, you're going too far, or, you know, we need to pull back, we need to deload, we need to rest. And I have not found that with a coach ever as yet. And so that's where I feel uncomfortable. I don't want to end up in menopause at 45.
No, but
I think that's great of you, honestly. It's very, honestly, fair play to hold that value so close to you and not jeopardize anything. Because how many times I hear time and time again, people do put too much trust in somebody else and they lose that with themselves and their health and everything. So honestly, fair play.
I think it's easy to lose sight of that when you're younger as well. Like, not necessarily that your age is playing into that. It probably be the same position you took 10 years earlier, Leonie, because it's obviously important to you. But I do feel like the younger you are, the less you think about those things because they seem so far ahead. And the reality of it is, like you said, you were natural for 5 years. That's still putting your body under hormonal stress.
I still lost my period sometimes as a natty. Do you know what I mean? Let alone putting all this, you know, let's say all this. I've only ever done Anavar, by the way. Like, obviously, I don't need Clen or anything like that. And like, you know,
but that's the reality of it. The younger you are, the less close that sort of reality is. And what people don't appreciate is that you're just bringing it closer.
Yeah.
But by doing it full stop and then put a cocktail in there, and then you're exasperating the issue. So it's nice to hear that was a consideration, so much so that you protect your own health.
Obviously I do posing coaching, and my inbox is always open for anyone on Instagram, you know, if they want to have a chat, and I get asked about this sort of stuff all the time. And I'm like, you would think that I was dead against peds, because I like really, really try and put people off it. But I don't want to upset anyone or sound condescending and stuff, but I worry a lot about like the really younger generation, the younger girls who are coming into this and just leaping straight into peds, like without one of my caveats for doing peds was I wanted to get to my natural potential first, you know, and I got to a point where everything, you know, was as big as it could be except my glutes, and I was like, right, now I need some help, kind of thing. And I'm seeing, you know, girls in their 20s who are nowhere near that natural potential, you know, have not built a foundation of muscle. They're going straight in with all these peds and stuff. And, you know, they're in the early 20s. And if they get their pro card early, which is awesome, and, you know, I'm still competing at 42, they could have another 22 years. Are they going to take peds for 22 years? Like, you know, what's that going to do? Exactly. And the other thing is, and I don't mean to diss anyone younger, but I was in my 20s. And like I said, I was living in London and partying and all this kind of stuff. And I know my risk aversion was down here. You know,
it doesn't exist.
Yeah, exactly. The stuff that I got up to, because I was like, live fast, man. Do you know what I mean? So like, I can only imagine what that could do, you know, when you start getting into all this stuff in your 20s as well. So I try and be the voice.
The reason.
Yeah, but no one listens to me. So.
They will now.
Oh God. It's crazy.
Reflecting because it's so pertinent, but
I know. And I think that's why we wanted you on as well, is because you have, been around a lot, and you have like obviously you're posing clients and you hear all these stories as well, and you just have that wisdom. And I think as well, like you said, being natty for so long, like you did really, really get as much muscle as you could do. And I
Mm,
think that's what a lot of girls need to realize, is that like the longer you're in this, the better,
yeah,
for your physique.
Mm.
And like you said as well, like you just have more mature muscle now.
yeah,
But I suppose speaking about like your actual pro card win and stuff like that. Were you coaching yourself throughout that period of time as well?
yeah.
That must have been, yeah, a lot of pressure, because I remember that season in
Oh,
particular, because I was competing the same time. I did the Arnold's in 2022 as
Oh, did
well.
you?
And I know you'd got a good few first places there. So obviously, super, super close to it. But how did you find that prep in particular? And was there any kind of setbacks along the way with coaching yourself in that sense?
I don't think there was really. I mean, my first show that year, the regional. So I'd also taken like 2 years off prior to that. Obviously, we'd had lockdown. I had I'd actually been working with Kim Odo just before lockdown. We never got to stage. It was like 4 weeks before show and we locked down. But at the time he was like, "You're getting your pro card. You're getting your pro card." Then we locked down. I couldn't afford him anymore. Left him, and then obviously like best part of a year not training, and I was like, I'm not going back on stage looking tiny. Do you know what I mean? Like I was close to my pro card then, apparently. So I'm gonna keep building. So I spent another year building. Told everyone I'd retired and I was gonna have babies and all this kind of stuff. But I could tell like my body was looking quite decent, and I was like, oh, just do a regional, just do a regional and just see how it looks this year, and it looked pretty good. Um, but like that first regional, I hadn't done a show in a while and I didn't really know. It was the first time I saw my body like do this reactive thing that it's been doing on Peak Week. And maybe that's because like the class had evolved and it was a much more leaner, refined look. And like I'd always been a lot softer, you know, sort of 2019 previously, because we were all quite soft
Mhm.
back then. It was very much the old Ashley K look back
yeah.
then. So I came in like super, super lean for that regional. And then like about 10 days out, I was like, right, okay, I'm a bit too lean. We've got to start eating. And that was the
Backlash.
first time I saw how reactive my body was. And I was just like literally getting leaner and leaner. The more carbs I put in, I was just getting leaner, drier, harder. And like I had no idea what to do. I was just like kept eating, and I was just shrinking. Like it was like you could literally see the body
See
fat
it.
just coming off me at one point. And it got to the day of the regional. It was a little bit reminiscent of Milan just gone, if I'm honest. And I was just sat there stuffing food. I must have eaten about 300 grams of carbs on that day. And like in the hotel room, I looked quite good.
Mhm.
And then I went out into like the open air, and my boyfriend took a picture of me, and I just looked like a marshmallow. Like I was so huge and soft, and I was so angry. And then I got on stage under those lights, and I looked still absolutely jacked. Like, and I was twice the size of every other girl as well. It was just, I just couldn't comprehend how much money much money, how much food,
Well, that too.
money I had eaten. Yeah, how much food I'd eaten and still managed to look like absolutely jacked. So that whole season, I was like basically sort of reversing through all of my shows. Like I didn't have to do any more cardio. Like every show was like every 2 or 3 weeks, and I was just, my food was going up, and I was like the looks got better and better. They were a bit worse at the beginning of the year, but they just
Mhm.
got better and better until yeah, like the last two were like really, really good looks, and I got my pro card. But I wouldn't say, other than that first one, which I'm starting to realize now, that's probably how every first show of my season is going to go. And I've probably just got to relax into that and know that my first one is going to be a disaster.
It's going to be a
Well,
trial run.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Because I've been getting so stressed about that in the pro league.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think it was too hard, if I'm honest.
That's
All
insane.
learning, isn't it, though? Like, and there was a
Yeah,
fair few shows and you did get there in the end. But
yeah.
was your goal to turn pro? Obviously, well, obviously was in those shows, but did you ever think that you were going to be going to the Masters? Like, 'cause that was obviously quite later on in the season as well. Like, was that always in your head to do?
Mm, no, I don't think they announced that it was happening until sort of halfway through my season. Um,
Okay.
and I went, like I said, I went into that year not really like we all do a show and we're like we always talk on social media like I'm going for my pro card kind of thing. But I never really was like at that point I'd always got like uh second and third in amateur and I was like right I want to get a first and then I got first and I was like all right I want to get a first and get against better athletes. Then when I was getting first I was like all right I'm going for the pro card now like this must be on, it's not a lucky streak kind of thing. So that's why I kept going. And then I think Billy Garnon at one of my shows, he was like, like there's a Masters in a couple of weeks' time. And I was like, no. Yeah. So I couldn't afford it at the time, but I was like, booked, gonna go.
Credit card
yeah.
done.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still paying for those bad boys right now.
Yeah, actually. It's
Honestly.
incredible though.
I just think as a run, and especially having that sort of responsibility for your look on your back, Leonie, is something to, I know very few people, if anybody, that has, well, one in particular, Scarlett, who's just turned pro and she prepped herself for the most part. But
Yeah.
other than that, it just doesn't, you don't hear of it. And for the reasons that you've already kind of said, like it's so hard to be objective with your own body and manage your own mind and then coach yourself as well. So in terms of the Pro League and talking about sort of your prep this year, because I know you've ran into a few like stumbling blocks with the same thing, your body just kind of doing what the hell it wants all by itself and you just having to read the manual and hope for the best. Like how have you found that comparative to that run in turning pro? So what have the biggest impacts and the biggest differences been between those two things, even though the situations are similar? Big question, sorry.
So are the challenges different or?
Yeah, in terms of like how you've mentioned the pressure before and that changing. So what do you think that's impacted the look this time around? Has that been an additional factor that you're now managing on top of your body doing its own thing?
I think that is definitely like a huge stress on top of what I was already feeling. And I think so I did a show last year as well, so that was my pro debut, and that wasn't a great one either. So I've not had a great run in the pro league, but like last year I got a bladder infection 3 weeks out from show or 2 weeks out. Went on antibiotic, I was about to say antidepressants there, antibiotics. Then I got tonsillitis just before I flew out, and then again with like my body being quite reactive, I struggled to fill out. Now it wasn't bad. I placed 14 out of 24 and it was my first ever show, and so like I'm not mad or anything, but that kind of pressure then of it being my pro debut and going through that and being ill on top of it, I was like I never want to coach myself again. So that's why I got myself a coach this year for the first show, but that coach was an Olympian level coach. And I thought that having someone, coach me through it would take a lot of pressure off me, but it actually layered on even more pressure because my body didn't react well for him either. So we still had all the same issues on peak week, but this time I'm like apologizing to someone, like, oh my God, like I'm such an embarrassment kind of thing, like, and all these other girls are looking incredible and like, responding to the program and looking great on stage, and I just felt like such a failure. So like the feeling of failure was like really compounding at the beginning of the year, if I'm honest. And then the physical side, I've got really, really badly fatigued. I tore my glute and all this kind of stuff, so it's been tough.
Only a little bit.
Wow.
Oh, I feel like on a prep though is everything is heightened though, isn't it? It's really, really tough, and like you only ever want to bring your best, and like a prep is no easy feat. Like it's a lot on the body, and it's hard when you get to those points and your body is not cooperating, especially, after so long doing this, you think that you can like fine tune it as well. Like it's hard mentally, I can imagine for sure. So talk us through, like, I suppose this year then, and the actual stage look. I know you touched on struggling to fill up, and
Yeah.
obviously you said in the past, like, you were eating 300 grams of carbs. Like, what differed in your peak week, sorry, this year?
So the one earlier on in the year, so like usually when I prep myself, I start my peak week about 10 days out because I know this happens.
Mm.
Um, and we didn't put carbs, well, I mean, I was eating carbs, but we didn't start like the peak week process until like literally the day before show, in as much as like filling me out. And I woke up the day before show like nearly a kilogram lighter than when I'd flown. And I had to spend like the entire day before, this was before Alicante, so the one in June, like literally the entire day, the day before, he was like, right, do not leave the house. You're not walking anywhere. Don't do anything. We're just eating today. And I think I ate about 500, 600 grams of carbs the day before that show, like 7 liters of water. And I just, so it was like every meal was like double the salt, pump your glutes, send me a chicken. And yeah, until about 4 p.m. it wasn't working, and then my glutes started to fill up a little bit. I actually put on 3 kg in that day.
Uh-oh. What? Christ
Right, the
alive.
glutes.
Yeah.
Wowee. How does that impact like your digestion as well, Leonie? Because obviously you're used to pacing that kind of load over 10 days and I'm saying trickling it in by your standards. I
Yeah.
don't think many bikini girls will be seeing 300-400 grams of carbs on the day of show or the day before.
Yeah.
But to load it in versus putting it in the day before, how did that impact like digestion,
That
your look?
was, I mean, so I again, something I talk about a lot on Instagram. I suffer with IBS and like
Yeah.
bloating a lot. So I was really, really struggling. I've had shows where like I've nearly pooped myself on stage, and I've had shows where I haven't had one for like an entire week leading up to it. Like that's another
Wow.
stress that I always like encounter. And yeah, my stomach was just so stretched. Obviously, I was like really lean as well, so it's like that
Yeah.
thin skin just like completely stretched out like a barrel the day before. It was like 40 degrees heat and like no aircon as well. So I felt pregnant. I was like laid on my back on the bed, like this massive stomach, just finding myself just like get through it, you
Oh,
can do it.
God.
Uh,
I mean,
um,
you laugh now, but it must have been really quite stressful.
it was,
Add the layer of stress on that you're not in control of this process whatsoever.
and I also, again, something else I talk a lot about, like I suffer really badly with like the stage nerves.
Mm,
And that was another reason why I wanted a coach, because I just wanted all the pressure off me so I could focus on my mindset. And
yeah.
the day before, I sat there with like a massive belly, like having palpitations from all the carbs that I'm eating. And I was just like, oh, this is just like the worst day of my life. I didn't know the next day would be the worst day of my life. But,
Yeah.
but, Harry Sexton, like, we had like a huge video call like the day before as well. So she was like, coach me through it. She's like, you can do it. Keep eating. You'll be fine. But yeah, I was not in a good place mentally. Didn't feel in a good place physically with my stomach. And another issue is as well, I've got so many issues. It's crazy.
Me too.
I've got quite a big waist for a bikini girl. Like it's not necessarily wide, but I've got very muscular obliques and I've got really muscular erectors. So like I have to like be really clever with my posing, my front pose to try and hide that a little bit. But also when I carb up, those things carb up as well. So I can have everyone like every single peak week at the beginning, everyone's like, oh my God, look how tiny your waist is. And I'm like, yeah, you wait a couple of days.
Just you wait.
So like if ever I'm having an off day with a show day, which has happened a few times lately, you'll know because the waist will be massive as well, because not only will I have eaten loads of food, but I'll have like really filled out obliques and erectors. So I felt very uncomfortable on stage the next day because not only did like lots of stuff go wrong on the stage day, but like yeah, I just didn't feel like I could pull my stomach in.
And it knocks your confidence, doesn't it?
It really did.
I mean, if you're nervous already, but
Yeah.
then getting up there, you work that hard and for that long to bring your best. Like it's got to be frustrating.
And it was such a huge show. Like
Yeah.
I didn't know at the time how big it was going to be when I booked it. I didn't even realize Tyler Mannion was judging as well. And there was like 30 bikini girls. I don't know if you've seen BB Spaces in Alicante. Like
I've been and competed there. It's unreal.
Every single seat, both downstairs, upstairs, was full. And this is another thing that you know, the difference between amateur and pro. Every amateur show, even when I won my pro cards, there's like 10 people in the audience, even abroad. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. And then you get to these pro shows and it's full and there are so many cameras on you. And then you're like, oh my God, there's a live feed as well, isn't there? You know, and like, it's insane. It's insane.
Well, you talked about the nerves there, and I suppose we'd like to think that, you know, more time in the sport, more stage time, that would reduce. But would you say that, like, being in the pro league now, and we always say it on here, like the amount of social media coverage that shows get nowadays, like, and even like amateurs getting all these videos taken, like it's just huge. How much you can get, like more eyes on you. But have you found that that's harder to manage, that kind of nerves?
Yeah, I would say so. My last year as an amateur, like I was very, very nervous in the beginning, and I got a lot better through that season. I think it happens as well. Like when you're doing back-to-back shows, you kind of ease into it. I wouldn't say at any point I felt comfortable on stage, but by the time I won my pro card, I was definitely owning it a little bit more and a little bit more relaxed. But yeah, coming to the pro level, like I said, when you see all those people, if you're not someone who is comfortable doing that, you know, like I don't like doing presentations in front of people and stuff like that. I'm not a naturally, you know, performance kind of person. So that is really, really tough. And if you're not feeling your best as well, which I haven't felt so far at the pro league, that really, really doesn't help. So it's difficult. It's very difficult.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Just social media pressure too. I think when you've got a lot of eyes on you and you're sharing your prep and your pro debut and stuff like that, like it is a lot, you know, and you want to do yourself proud, but you also want to like show everybody else, like, look what you've been working so hard for and all that. So yeah, I can imagine.
You can't even, like, at the amateur league, there were like some shows where I would like not tell anyone I was prepping, and I would just go, and no one would know until I got on my story at the end of the day. I'd be like, first place.
Yeah.
They'd be like, what? Like, we had no idea. But again, in pro league, you can't do that. You know, like someone always sees that little post that goes up, and they're like, oh my God, and then all of a sudden everyone knows.
And then the lists are out as well now, because you've got to pre-register, haven't you? So you can't just hop into shows anymore. So the lists are out. We are guilty of posting them, so I'm sorry.
If you see a new future with me on it, just
I'll just scribble your name out and be like, she's not going. Did you have to pull any shows this year, Leonie? I think I remember you sort of delaying a show, or you wanted to be in one, decided against it. What was that like as well in terms of making that decision?
I had booked to go to Florida 3 weeks after.
Yeah.
And so when I got back from Alicante, I didn't. So I tore my glute on stage. But I didn't.
How?
This all happened.
The fear of any muscle group it could have been. It had to be the glute.
I know. And it was in my front pose as well. So I literally like twisted into that front pose. And then I just felt like, you know, when your jeans slowly like come undone, I felt that feeling down my glute. Yeah. And we were on stage for so long as well. Like I had to sit in it for ages.
No,
I passed out. Just give me a minute. That just made me feel really funny.
It was awful.
That's
but like
awful.
I'd been working glutes so hard up to that point as well. Like the volume I was doing with the coach at the time was like, you know, I loved working with him, by the way. But I think like it's very more suited to an American kind of lifestyle where you not a commuter and walking around with a 10 kg backpack on you all day and stuff. And I've really fatigued my glutes. I didn't realize they were that fatigued until I was on stage, and I was like, oh, that's it then, isn't it?
That's horrendous.
And then I got back, went straight back into training for a week, and then I started to get like this massive brain fog, and like I was slurring my words. I just wasn't functioning at all. And started speaking to Kerry, and she was like, "You've got fatigue here, like it's bad," kind of thing. She was like, "Just let me help you." So she took over, like got me out of that and stuff. Was trying to fill my glutes back out. They were so flat. They were really flat on show day. Really, really flat. For like good 2 weeks after that show. And she really wanted me to go and do it, but I was like, I'm not going to do a show if I'm not feeling my best, looking my best.
Yeah.
So I didn't go, and I went on holiday instead.
I mean, that's a good shout.
Yeah, I wish I had stopped then, though, if I'm honest. I know, like, we all want to be a hero and soldier on, but having now, like, come out of prep and, like, zoomed out of the whole thing, I was like, I should have stopped a long time ago. Like, I've lost a lot of volume, a lot of size, a lot of money.
Yeah,
and it wasn't a great look or experience either in Milan. So I wish I had stopped back then. But at the time, you just like, you go into soldier mode, don't you? Like, I've got this. Like, preps are hard. We can do this. Keep pushing. Keep pushing.
I did the same this year. We pulled it, and then I think it was a week later, I went back to my coach. I was like, no, everything's fine now. It's okay. We'll go again. And he was like, Jade, sit down.
Yeah.
Like, sit down. No. And I think having that second person, and you said it at the start, having that second person to turn around and say, no, you've done enough.
Yeah.
We're going to stop because this is what's best for you. It swings and roundabouts. You have control or you have too much control. And I suppose it's a double-edged sword. What do you do? Because in the moment and whilst you're there, you don't want to quit. You don't want to give up on yourself because this is what you're working for. But it's knowing when to give.
I know. And also, but no one told me to stop. Like everyone around me was like, I really think you need to carry on and like do another show because you had such a bad experience in Alicante. If you don't do one, I can't see you ever getting back on stage again because it should be that bad. So like everyone was going, come on, you can do this. Like, I think you just need to do it. And I was like, okay.
Yeah. I get that.
It doesn't take much of a twist though when you're in it at that point, because you are trying to salvage your own experience as well, which is reasonable. It's not for gain, I suppose, other than sort of intrinsic value and putting that back where it should have been in the first place.
Yeah.
It's not just an ego thing. It's been to try and restore your faith a little bit. But
yeah. Do you see that happening in the future, like having a bit more hope for your next preps?
I actually feel in a very good place with it right now. Like, don't get me wrong, I look back on like this whole year with cringe. But I'm very much a person who like tries to learn lessons from stuff and like take value from it. And I've learned so much this year, like, you know, educational stuff like about fatigue management, you know, from Kerry and stuff. I've never suffered with that. I've been coaching for years. I fortunately have never had a client who has suffered with fatigue like that either. And I now know how to deal with it. You know, I've never torn something. I've never there's a whole load of I've nevers, but like I've learned loads of sort of educational stuff about it as well. I also, rightly or wrongly, I did it for the right reasons, but I don't think it worked with what my body was going through with fatigue and stuff. I tried to come in a little bit softer for Milan. Like, I don't know if you saw the pictures of me going into Peak Week. I wouldn't say I looked soft, but for me.
But you were full. You were very full. My God, I remember watching it, and I was like, "What on earth has she eaten? Like, what happened?"
So, like, I was trying to be less shredded, and hard, and that came from the fact that my on top of all the other insecurities and stuff that I stress about coaching myself, one of my biggest sort of not problems, but things that sort of gets to me is all the backseat coaches that are constantly, you're too lean. You're too lean. Like, I get 6 weeks out from a show and they're like, stop, don't get any leaner. You're too lean for bikini. You know, I go into a gym and they're like, you're far too lean for bikini. I get, 20-year-old girls who have like literally done one show telling me that I'm too lean for bikini. And then I get big coaches telling me I'm too lean for bikini. And then obviously like the trend is going towards a softer look now anyway. So I was like, all right, I'm really, really fatigued. Like, I'm injured. I'm struggling like to stay full. Maybe getting leaner is not a good idea. Like, let's try a little bit softer this time. And it wasn't a great look for many reasons. But one of the things I learned this year is, like Marnie brings a lovely soft look. Like, the judges love it. Rowana, I hope I'm saying her name right, brings a soft look and the judges love it. Maureen. But what they all have that I don't have is this beautiful bubbly muscle. If you're going to be soft, you have to have nice full muscle bellies that push that out. Right? I've never thought about this before because I've never bought it, but I don't have that. I'm a dense, hard athlete. I get quite bubbly shoulders, but everything else is like just that long, flat, dense muscle.
It needs the carbs.
That underneath like body fat is not a great look, So I know now. I'm glad I kind of like wasted that look on a look that was never going to be great anyway, and that's something I can carry forward. I can tell everyone, go look at my last photos because I'm not too lean. Like, I need to be lean to bring my best.
I remember speaking to Paul. I think we had Paul on talking about sort of judges' feedback, and he said exactly that. And somebody else has said it before as well. The way that you interpret the judges' feedback, they're looking at your body on that day and they might come to you and say, yeah, you need to be fuller or you need to be leaner. That's not necessarily to say that you need to take an extra couple of pounds of body fat off. It might be manipulation somewhere else. It might be actually loading you a little bit heavier so that the muscle belly's fuller, so that you look leaner against your skin. And then there's all the skin variants in terms of thick skin, thin skin, all that exists though. And I think it's hard, especially if you're coaching yourself and you're having to reassure yourself of your own body, your own mind, your own decisions. Then you've got other people who are always going to come to you. I'm sure it's a point of care and a place of goodwill and things like that. But that must be tough. That must be tough to stay firm when you know that things aren't necessarily going to plan for you at the moment anyway.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things I struggle with, I think, is everyone trying to tell me how I should look. And like I said, I live in my body and I know
what it does.
Yeah, and I know how it looks. I know that I can get a fuller look very lean, with a bit of body fat. It doesn't look that full. And I also know, like, I kind of prefer that look. And like, not every judge is going to like it, but some judges will, like there are girls who are on the leaner side like me who do really well. They might not win the Olympia. I'm not trying to win the Olympia. I'm just trying to, be the best version of myself. I mean, the best version of myself is always going to be a lot leaner than some of these other girls, I think. So, but it does really, really messes with your head when someone is telling you like, you need to be this. And I'm like, this is another thing as well. Like, I kind of tend to, I've worked in banking for a long time and stuff. And I think I'm quite sure of myself in many ways and quite confident. But for some reason in this industry, I hand over my authority and power to people. I think it's like, because I've taught myself to coach myself, like I've not been with a big coach for long enough to learn from them. I've just learned from like trial and error. Like there's all of this imposter syndrome. So when other people are telling me, you're not looking how you should look, I believe them.
They must be right. Yeah, they must be right. I must be wrong.
And when, like someone tells me you should probably do this right now, like, sometimes I've just gone, oh, okay, then I just do it. And then I'm like, well, I just ruined it. And like,
but if you think about the years of experience that they've got transforming different bodies versus the years of experience you've got transforming your body.
Yeah.
You are already trumping them straight out of the gate because you've got more years working with your body. So you know more than they do about your body. It doesn't matter about anything else.
Yeah.
But that must be challenging because I categorically, Grace, I'm sure you'd say the same. I couldn't be objective enough to navigate myself through that.
No.
Yeah, it is hard. And we all get those kind of like prep goggles as well. Like we all have those photos that we post sometimes. We're like, can you believe I thought I was not lean enough in this picture? And at the time you do think you're really, really fat, don't you? And then like you look back on it and you're like, whoa, that was lean. You know, so I'm always aware that like I could have prep goggles right now. And I'm like, well, maybe they're seeing something that I'm missing. And it messes with you. So, but I've got to just learn. Like I've said to myself after this year, like, you know yourself, just shut it all off from this point onwards. Like, just do you.
Yeah, it's hard, I think, with just going up in the ranks, you know, the pressure is going to be a lot higher, you know, and that like you can be a lot harder on yourself. But it does sound like you're on the road to trusting yourself a little bit more. And I feel like we haven't seen the best Leonie yet in the pro league,
definitely.
you know, and that will come. I have full faith as well. It's exciting, and it sounds like you've learned a lot this year, and I think that's the main thing. With any prep is that you're able to just learn as much as you can, really. But
100%.
I came into this year like with one goal, and I know again it sounds crazy because most girls come into the year being like, I want to get to the Olympia. I was like, I just want to feel comfortable on stage this year. Like, that was my goal. And I smashed that. Like, it's the worst I've ever looked. Like, literally, I haven't even looked like that at the amateur league. But I had the time of my life. And, like, I'm just not scared of, right now, I don't feel like I'm scared of competing again. Like, if you can get on stage knowing, like, you hate yourself to the point where you want to cry right now, like what you're seeing in the mirror, and still get on stage and be like, well, whatevs. Like,
but you know it's where you should be.
Exactly,
you know it's where you should be. If you can take anything from it, draw the positivity from it, even though you've got every reason not to, you're going back up there, and you'll keep going back up there, and you'll keep getting better.
But also,
and I can't wait.
Like, what? Now, I'm not saying I'm a high level athlete, but like,
professional,
what high level athlete in any sport do you know who hasn't had a really bad year? You know, a year where they've lost all their games or been injured, or like, you know, the country has hated them because they scored an old goal or something. Like, but like, it's happened to every single person, you know, and I just had to tell myself, like, you now reach the high ranks when you're at that point where you're having that crap year. Do you know what I mean? And that person, you know, would not be a high level athlete if they'd have quit at that point. Do you know what I mean? They're only where they are because they like kept going, and they were like, right, well, what can we learn from this? How can the game be better? What do I need to do to get to that next level? So like, I know it sounds like I'm like, you know, just trying to make myself feel better, but you do have to do that if you want to survive this sport. But like, you have to look at it like that, and you have to be like, right, well, what can we learn? And, you know, I'm just like any other sports person, you know, it's just that my sport is aesthetic, and, you know.
For what it's worth, Leonie, it helped me as well, you know. It helped me because it was around a similar spot that I was watching you trying to do what you were doing, and coach had pulled my prep, and it helped me an unmeasurable amount to know that I wasn't alone in the world of having a little bit of a stumbling block, you know. So like, things didn't go to plan, and it wasn't the end of the world. You expect it to be the end of the world. You expect all eyes to be on you, especially in your position as a pro. You expect everybody to have this expectation of you. And the reality of it is, I'd like to think, and I know we've spoken about it, nobody cares. As long as you take what you need from it, the rest is irrelevant. Nobody cares.
We all have in our heads, you know, like when we do this sport, that like everyone who's following us is really following us. They're not. They just occasionally see a picture and they like it, and, you know, occasionally they might remember that you're competing today and say good luck. But like, no one is sat there going, oh, I wonder how Leonie's doing in the gym today. Like, no one really, really cares. And like, you just got to get out of that mindset.
Mhm.
And like 98% of the people who follow me are supportive. There is maybe 2% who probably loved what happened this year. But you just, we're all going to have those people, and you just have to like tell yourself, what are they really getting out of the sport? If that's,
Their game.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If that's what makes them feel better is other people not doing well. What who broke them? So like
Send them back.
Just like what Jade said, it's relatable, and it's important that people can see that not every prep is perfect. And I know Kerry Saxon is another prime example. She's had her fair share of struggles as well. And this is why we have this podcast, is so people can share that side of it, and that we don't have this expectation that every single prep is a perfect one, because we all, face challenges in different ways, or even in off season as well. So it's just about sharing that, throughout our journeys. And nobody's
Being
perfect, as I
human.
say. Yeah, just being human, literally. Like, these things do pop up, but it's ultimately, making sure that you take the lesson, and that you still try and enjoy the journey as best you can.
Yeah. I mean,
Really, so.
I'm looking forward to stuff right now. Like, I've lost a lot of muscle, a hell of a lot of muscle, and like I should be really gutted about it. But like everyone was telling me before, I was getting to, a little bit too big for bikini and to pull back on training. I get a year of like literally training blood and guts again. Like nothing's off limits anymore. So like you have to like just find silver linings and everything, I think.
Yeah.
And that is a silver lining for me.
Yeah.
Get to train like a beast.
Yeah. Just training glutes 3 times a week is not fun.
Do not tear the other glute now, please.
No. Do not.
Oh, keep the glutes, please.
Yeah.
Oh, incredible.
No, well, it's been amazing, Leonie. Honestly, talking to you, I think it's so humbling. You have so much humility in the sport. You can tell that your heart lies in the sport, as opposed to what you can necessarily gain from it in a like sort of medals or wins standpoint. It's very holistic. It's very grounded. Loved it completely. You need to plug now, because you've got your posing.
Yeah.
You need to plug. Where can everybody find you? Where can everybody follow you? Okay. Hopefully not attack your DMs too hard.
So on Instagram, I am Leonie_West_IFBB Pro, of course. I am a posing coach, so you can find me at the posing room. Yeah, the posing room. At the posing room, that's it. I was going to say .com. I was like, no, that's not Instagram. At the posing room. And that's it for now. However, I am launching something new, hopefully in the new year, because I'm also a qualified hypnotherapist. And I started learning this, so I've got 2 qualifications in it now, to help people who have these kind of self-confidence issues and stage issues, because it's something that has been helping me. So
that would be incredible.
Yeah,
definitely a gap in the industry, I think, as well, for that. Like, obviously mindset is huge, but stage nerves, like, God, like nothing more nerve-wracking than standing on stage in a bikini, like for hundreds of people as well. So definitely.
I'll let you into a quick secret before we go as well. Obviously, there are a few Olympians backstage at some of these, and I watched a few of them look like they were about to puke before they go on stage. So don't ever think that just because you get to an Olympian level, it's just they're full of confidence. They're not. They're people like everyone else, and they still get very, very nervous stepping on stage. So you're not alone if you're struggling.
I know, and you want to enjoy the day and even just bring the best look possible. Exactly. So that would be an incredible service. Looking forward to that. Thanks. Amazing. Good on you. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. It's been awesome.
Yeah, I loved it.